question.
So I was talking with the other side over there, and I'm sure you're
Sure.
familiar with the books on rape and everything else, promoting rape, like with the youngsters and everything else. Yes, yes.
There are books promote.
Some books
in
are
school.
promote. Yes.
Do you know the
promote-
names of the books?
I heard.
There's Looking for Alaska, Push, This Book is Gay.
These are
Uh,
fictional stories. They're not.
yeah.
They are fictional stories.
Curriculum being taught.
But the question is could a minor understand that it's pure fiction? And are they even of the age that they can even understand the material that's I read some of the books. I couldn't read it. I couldn't keep reading.
No, it's disgusting.
No, it's absolutely awful what's in those books. And it's age inappropriate. But in the end, all that was being asked for, whether by Linda Chin, who's a trustee, again, representing the people, or was being asked by the speakers who wanted to speak but were shut out, is we're asking them to say, hey, we tried to take this offline. So if you had a book committee, right, that you didn't have to do it and try to have this argument, discussion, debate right there in the actual school board meeting, but take it offline, have a book committee with parents, with trustees, with whomever, right, and hash it out offline, do your research, determine a course of action, come back to the board and report it. That is the way that it should be done professionally. But instead, what they're doing is saying, shut up and leave. We're locking the doors on you. That's what they did.
When I spoke with them, they said, well, it should be taught. It should be taught. These books should be allowed because it's educational. It educates the children on rape.
Well, I guess you could take them to a strip club and educate them there too. but would any parent do that? Would any trustee do that? Would any police officer allow that? Would any parent sit by and okay? Would any bystander? If I was a stranger and I saw somebody walking into a strip club with a minor, I'm going to go up there and stop them.
That's right.
So because I believe it does take a village, and we all need to act on this. So if you're out there and you're sitting on your couch and you're just kind of chilling and you're checking these podcasts out and you're like, oh man, that's awful. Well, we need you to get involved. Numbers matter. When they take polls, these numbers matter. And when those two books were removed in November, that gallery was packed. It was full. And we need that to happen. But the sad thing is that these boards also know that the parents are at home taking care of the kids. They're getting them ready, doing their homework, feeding them dinner, getting them ready for bed, make sure they get a good night's rest, and they got to go to work the next day.
Wardrobe malfunctions. Have you had one?
Me? No.
Now, how do they have? I've never had one myself either. But apparently, it happens all the time. That's what they say, and it just happens. It's okay. Can you explain that? Like a school full of kids, someone's reading a book, and they get up and flop, flop, flop.
Well, those drag queen story times should never be happening.
Now, if that was me or you, we would be charged with indecent exposure, walking around some of these pride parades and everything else, exposing ourselves to these children. How come we haven't seen any of that happen?
Well, because I believe Doug Ford is protecting through the Toronto Police Department and preventing the charges from being laid. So there was actually a phone call made. I don't know, maybe you heard the phone call. Okay, where a guy called up and said, hey, so is it illegal for me to walk down the street naked? And they're like, oh, yeah, of course it is. So then they said, well, what about in a parade? And it's like, well, in the parade, it's kind of okay. It's like, so it's okay to walk naked in a parade.
Family parade.
Where there are children present, but it's not okay to walk naked down the street. And he's like, yep, that's pretty much what. So double standard was laid.
Wow
is right. And the sad thing is you can see photos of children in front of naked men.
Of course, I've seen them.
Yeah. And so that's extremely inappropriate. It's against the law. And my question is Doug Ford, if you are such a supporter, why'd you keep your clothes on, buddy? I think Doug Ford's not all in on this. I think, Doug, you got some work to do, buddy. I think you got to go take a naked walk down Yonge Street.
It's happening all over Canada, right all over America. In what state or what province has a drag queen been charged for performing in front of children?
That's the problem. They haven't been.
That's right.
Because they're being protected by the woke theocracy. That's why.
Never illegal. It was illegal when being gay was illegal.
Okay, but what about the fact that these drag queens are violating the dress code of the schools that they're actually in?
That's a violation of the school's dress code.
Why are they allowed in the school?
But does a violation of the school dress code mean it's intrinsically unethical?
According to the dress code, yes.
Right. Yeah, and like girls, when I was in high school, got sent home all the time for wearing spaghetti straps, short shorts, things like that. But that's teaching people to...
Were you going to say hate?
No, it's teaching kids that like boys will be boys and boys are always going to look at women with a sexual lens, right?
Can you elaborate on that?
Why isn't it taught in schools that men shouldn't sexualize women? Men shouldn't sexualize anybody else the way that they're kind of normalized.
In some schools, it is taught.
In some schools it is taught.
My daughter's school.
In some schools it's not.
Simpson shirt when I was a little kid with a middle finger. So
Yeah.
I remember those days.
Who the
Yeah.
hell are you? Was what was on my shirt.
Yeah.
Sent home, but it's inappropriate.
But one of the issues that, if talking about what happened at Walkerville, is that the parents weren't aware. They weren't aware of what was happening at the assembly that day. And so they could have at least chosen to keep their kid, at least at a minimum, chosen to keep their children home. Right, exactly. But they're denied the choice. So they're trying to ram it down the throats of parents and children. Right. But if, when we were talking earlier, right, we're having a good discussion. And when we were, how if that was on the flip side, right? And if you had a Christian teacher say, I need you to accept Christ as your savior right now. You think that'd make the news?
No, that happens all the time. Teachers do this all the time. In my school, in my grade school, Sacred Heart, I was told I did go to a Catholic school. Yeah. But yeah, sorry. It just feels like, I mean, there's definitely a way around it that the parents can choose to like opt their children out of reading the books, going to the assemblies, all this. But it seems to me this is also a way of like, look at how many kids were here. Like there is a message being shoved down these kids' throat, whether it's pro-gay or not, right?
This isn't about gay. It's about sexualizing children. Period.
Just like
Yeah.
just like we talked about earlier, like if this was happening in a playground. If this were happening in a playground, those police officers would be showing up and arresting somebody, right? For what we saw in the books, right?
I go back to the sex ed curriculum. Like I didn't know that Ford didn't get through with the holding it at 97.
His election promise was to end the Kathleen Wynne sex education. He didn't do that. He's made it worse.
Okay. So what is our sex education? Is it based off the 97 curriculum still? Is it based off an older curriculum?
And yes,
Right. So we agree that's outdated.
it's not. It has nothing to do with it. It has other material, how old the children are, but first and foremost, the parents. They are the ones, because when all this hits the fan and the child is confused and they're not even reached adolescence and are saying, "Are you sure you're a boy? Are you sure you're a girl?" And they're confused all the way through adolescence. They start making decisions, life-changing decisions, having to do with whether it's hormone therapy, surgeries, who knows what. And then later on in life, when those people, because those testimonies are out there, and I would encourage you to go look at the testimonies, when they come back and they're suing the doctors for what they did to them, who's picking up those pieces? The parents are, and the Ontario public. It should never have happened in the first place. If you're an adult and you want to make decisions about what you want to do, I guess, people can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I would be happy to share my side of the story. I'm not going to sit there and say, you're an adult, I'm going to sit here and physically stop you from doing that. I would plead that you don't do it, because I think you can't take that back. And those people who have gone through that as children and have actually gotten to that stage of the point of no return regret it.
I'm sure the percentage is much lower than the ones that don't regret it. I'm sure.
We can talk data all day, but I would encourage you, go look it up. Those testimonies are sad. They're tragic. Because they can't go back in time and undo it. That's why there's legal cases against the people who.
Of course, there are people who have regretted their transitions, but there's loads more people that haven't.
How do you know that?
Are you aware of the suicide rate between under transgenders? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of the suicide rate. No.
It's very, very high. It's astronomical, actually. So I'm not sure of the exact stats, but I know it's.
It ranks up there with war veterans and farmers, which was the highest suicide rate.
But the bottom line, all we're saying is, as far as parents' rights go, and just parents in general, we're saying the parents are the primary caregivers. There's no place in this world where a child crosses the threshold of an institution, or any building for that matter, where the parent gives up that authority. Biblically, that's wrong, and I think most parents just commonsensically would say that's wrong. Those children are my responsibility, and actually, the Ontario law also reflects that fact. I believe it's called the Ontario Parental Responsibility Act, where it actually says, like we were talking before, right? If the child actually commits a crime, they damage property, they go back to the parents for what happened. Well, you just set a precedent right there. You just said that those parents are responsible for what that child's done. But then when they go to school, it's like everything changes. You can flip that. You can sexualize a minor.
But them saying that them sharing their sexual orientation isn't a crime. Them sharing their sexual orientation is not a crime, though.
Nobody's saying it is, right? Nobody's saying it is, but it should be. But any sensitive topic should be discussed in privacy at home with the parents.
Any sensitive topic.
That should be the first stop. That should be the first stop.
But what if kids don't have a good home? What if kids are in foster homes? What if
People looking from the outside in on a situation like that are being very presumptuous, right? And just because
kids aren't that outside if they've grown up with the kids, they've had them for X amount of years.
Would you agree, though, your point you're making is the worst case scenario point, right? A parent that's abusive, or are you asserting that's the majority?
I'm not asserting that's the majority. I'm asserting it's very commonplace.
But I think we're taking. But I mean, what I heard earlier when I talked to the gentleman from 514, so they take in. I think he said the way he referred to it was queer children who don't feel they have a safe space, or how old, or 12 and plus, where they've been taken in, right? So, but what he's saying is that they want to provide a safe space for them, but at the same time, it's like the parents are the ones who are primarily need to provide that safe space, and assuming that those parents have been engaged properly, I think that's a very dangerous assumption. But also, what's happening in our culture, and depending on what side of the story you're on, they look at the faith first, assume based on the faith that the child's not being listened to, and then they're saying, "Oh, government has to intervene." You say we need separation of church and state. We don't want a theocracy. Well, on this we agree, but that's not what's being that's not happening. You have it at the federal, at the provincial, and the municipal levels. They're telling parents, they're telling the public that this is what's going to be your behaviors. It is not their place to do. You want separation of church and state? Well, then I think we agree on that. Let's put them back in their place.
Yeah, I don't think that means that the schools are telling kids to be trans or gay.
Well, but there are examples out there, and I can tell you from stories that I know of, where the teacher did ask. I think it was a young girl. She, how do you know? Questioned her. I think she was like 7 or 8 years old. How do you know you're not a boy? And she wouldn't have. And the little girl's like, I'm a girl. So it went home. The parents then had to have that discussion with her and say, "You are a little girl. We were there when you were born, and we know you're a little girl." But the teacher who's an authority figure, who the child does respect, would not go back on it. And they went to the principal. Principal would not go back on it. And so then they're stuck with this child who's now confused because of a thought that was introduced that didn't need to be introduced at an age where this child hasn't even reached adolescence.
Yeah, in that scenario, yeah, I agree with the adolescence thing, like especially if you're talking about like transition surgery. That's all sorts of hormones are being messed with and your hormones aren't even fully developed. But in this scenario that you're describing, I think there were two failures. The teacher, assuming, I don't think a teacher should go up to somebody and ask them about their sexual orientation or identity. But the parents also failed the student in this scenario by not informing them about other sexual orientations and other genders.
The subject shouldn't have even been discussed at that point in time. That's what the parents are saying. The parents didn't talk about it because the parents know the child's not ready for it.
Now it's brought up.
Right. And it should never have been. You know why the teacher did that? The teacher's backed by a woke school board. That's why.
Yeah.
See, it's the dog wagging the tail. They introduce it and then normalize it and then say we have to have the discussion because it's normal.
So it's never the other way around. It's never the parents saying you only have one option and it's being straight and being the identity that you were born with.
Well, until this new science was brought into play, it is.
This is old. This is centuries old.
According to the media you follow, I would agree that you think that. But according to civilization, God, and science, chromosomes, there is male and there is female. And of course, there are exceptions to certain rules.
The indigenous depiction of gender, right?
Elaborate what indigenous depiction of gender means.
The indigenous people that were here before us have depictions of gender that are totally different than the ones we understand today. They have multiple genders. They have people who represent.
You mean spirits?
I believe there's more than 2 genders.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
There's a lot of literature that supports it. There's a lot of indigenous history that supports it. A lot of different tribes have different beliefs.
Two-spirit.
There's two-spirit. Yes, that's kind of the umbrella term.
I don't think that's gender. Unless, of course, in today's day and age, if a spirit can embody anything, then why not choose whatever gender you want?
Taking the two-spirit term literally, that's what we use to describe all sorts of different.
I'm sorry. You're native?
Nope.
So we is
I didn't say we.
the tape will say that you did. Okay, continue.
Okay. Okay. I'm just saying that's the umbrella term that we've come up with today. Society's come up with today.
Why are we coming up with umbrella terms?
Because we don't understand the
Definitions
definitions, or there's lost definitions. It's lost.
or altered definitions? Are we altering definitions now?
I mean, yeah, sure.
So that we might be able to agree that that could be the problem. Are we altering definitions so much that people don't understand what anything means anymore, or are replacing a meaning with something that feels better to themselves and is propped up by the media and establishment?
Sure. Like, I mean, I can't speak for all indigenous people. I'm not indigenous myself, but
Talking about anybody in the umbrella.
yeah, a lot of people don't feel depicted by that term. A lot of people have terms that are brought through their history, through their families, by word of mouth, through generations, right? So a lot of that's been lost. A lot of that's gone.
What would you say to the people in the gay community who are saying we don't want to be they don't want to be associated with the what is it, the light blue and the pink on the flag and the intersex and all the rest of it? They're saying, hey, we don't want that, in our movement. We don't support that, and we don't want you sexualizing minors, because there's a lot in that community who would, I know personally, who would say we don't want that. What would you say to them?
Yes, I
think
love
there's
it.
a lot of divisiveness in the LGBTQ community in terms of that. I know a lot of bisexual people that didn't feel represented by the pride flag. So then there's a lot of gay people that were offended that bisexual people get a piece on my flag. I think that's a little, I think all the sides should sort of come together at some point.
Yeah, agreed. I think all the sides should first of all come together on the fact that the school board can't close their doors to the public.
Sure.
Number one,
100%.
right? So I think that's why when I was going over and trying to talk to the people on your side, so I don't know what else to say, but when I was trying to go to the counter protester side, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say is like, hey, we're not here just discussing about, your lifestyle, our lifestyle, your worldview, our worldview. We're trying to say, hey, the school board cannot close its doors to the public. That's illegal.
We need a line of communication.
100%.
Everybody needs to be heard by the school board.
This is awesome.
But
That's all we're asking.
Amen.
no, 100%. I think where we disagree on is the grooming, the sexualization of children is not intrinsic with gay studies or sexual orientation studies.
These things in daycare centers, these books and everything else promoting it. These children can't even put a sentence together yet.
Children's YouTube videos.
Exactly.
Well, sure, yeah, I agree with you. Like, some of those books shouldn't be in schools. I think we can agree on there needs to be a better curriculum that depicts sexual orientation for children that want to learn about it.
Well, shouldn't that be the
should
parents' decision?
It's tough to say that for me. I don't know where I sit on
Who
that.
gives the teachers the permission to go and push this on the children and teach them this?
What gives the teachers permission to teach them anything? Like, why?
Reading, writing, and arithmetic, something like that.
Yeah.
That's morally neutral topics. But when you start talking about things that go directly against the, say the Bible or the text that these faiths actually hold high and ascribe to, right? They actually read on a daily basis in order to live their lives accordingly. And it goes directly against that. But the parents like, okay, close the door. Let me tell you the way it really is, kid. Like that is highly, extremely offensive to a parent. That's why parents show up the way they do. That's why parents are upset about this. But what you just described, right? You're like you were saying, even within the gay community, there is a lot of division. There's a lot of confusion. Well, if it's so difficult for even the people within that community to explain it, how could a teacher possibly cover that in a classroom to a minor?
Right. There needs to be a solid curriculum about it. There needs to be something.
How do you settle the curriculum when the people who would actually direct the curriculum can't even understand where they're even coming from themselves?
Or agree with each other.
I don't. Yeah, it's a political stance. In most cases, it's a political stance. It's teachers don't want to lose their jobs, so they're not going to say anything about it, or they will risk their jobs to.
So it comes down to the soul of the person, the individual paycheck.
I mean,
or lack of soul.
Here's where it comes back around on the people of faith. Is that I know of a teacher who she asked to be changed from a classroom because she couldn't, in good conscience, use the pronouns the child was being asked to use because she knew the child, who was originally always represented as, say as a boy, and now wanted to be represented as a girl. In good conscience, the teacher couldn't say that she actually believed that she was telling the truth. She would be lying to the student in her conscience. So she asked to be moved out of that classroom. So now you have a teacher who wanted to be in that classroom to teach the kids, had to be relocated because of that. Now, that's not okay.
No, it's not. She gave up on the kid.
No, she didn't give up on the kid. What she believed was in the best interest of the child was to say, you're a boy and you will always be a boy. Now, and other topics, like you said, are very confusing, sensitive, and they're hard to cover. But the bottom line is open the doors, to all the school boards need to open their doors to the public. You're not going to like everything we say, and guess what? We don't like everything you say. But that's what democracy is. The engagement needs to happen, and they need to understand what their responsibility, their jobs. They need to understand their responsibility under the Ontario Education Act and consider the responsibility parents legally have over their children according to the law. You can't all of a sudden change that just because you want to push some woke religion really on the public. But that's what they're doing. It's rules for thee, not for me. We've seen it before. We're seeing it again, and that needs to stop. And we do not have principled leadership. And God knows, I can't wait for the next election.
You had stated that it is not a religion.
It's not a religion. It's a sexual orientation.
But when something is being pushed as an umbrella, as you put it, right, an umbrella community, it's being indoctrinated or taught or pushed, and anyone with an opposing voice is being called hateful or bigoted, then how is that inclusive and how is that tolerant?
Well, have religious communities not done the same thing past 100 years?
Well, as we talked about over there are always people in positions of power who abuse the power.
Well,
but
just in general, is the church not
no,
indoctrinating force?
no. There are people within churches that utilize it.
Maybe not in general.
Indoctrination. So when I went to school and when I teach kids, say in Sunday school, I will challenge them. Sometimes I'll even try and trick them. I'll say, you guys try and catch me, because I want them to think critically. I believe if you ask good questions, you get good answers. So it's more important than anything that a child, when they go through school, learn to ask good questions. That's how they're going to get good answers to actually live a good life. But when they go to school and they're told this is the way it is, but then when they write a report, and they're said, oh, sorry, you fail. When a teacher says, I don't believe in that, and they're like, well, sorry, you can't keep your job. They're being indoctrinated. Indoctrination means that when you're told something and then you cannot question it. That's what's happening right now in our schools. If you question it, then you are going to be punished for not towing the line. That's wrong. That's wrong on all levels. We live in a country that is all about the freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of association, freedom of mobility, all the rest of it, right? That's what our charter is there for. supremacy of God, rule of law. And when you go against that, you are going against the actual roots of Canada, our heritage, and why we live in a country that people want to flock to. People are crashing through our borders to get here, and into the US for that matter, into North America, because of that. But that is what is under attack. And you can see that in the laws that have been passed, the bills that have been passed.
I mean, I think I think kids should have the opportunity at some point in their curriculum, whether it's grade school, high school, whatever, to learn about sexual orientation, learn about the differences, even just learning about the differences that other people have.
They discover that themselves.
Well,
Why do they have
because
to be taught?
we say leave it up to the parents, and then does it ever get taught?
Yeah.
Because the only sexual orientation that gets taught is what is
Why can't
heterosexuality.
children grow up and learn what orientation they want to be on their own? Why do they have to be told? Why does it have to be taught?
Well, why do we teach about heterosexuality? Why do we teach about
Do we?
biology? Why do we teach about that stuff? Yeah.
Actually, you know what really do us well? Education vouchers. Because right now you can only no, because right now your tax dollars either go to the public or separate school boards, and both those school boards are being led by the Ontario government into what their curriculum is going to be. But if the parents had the money for their children to choose a different option, go to a charter school, a private school, then they could actually, or to be homeschooled for that matter, right? And a lot of people are going to be choosing that, I think, near term, real quick, because if this garbage goes on in September, their enrollment's going to go down. It needs to go down if it continues. So the bottom line is that if the parents had the choice, give them the choice and have this discussion. And like what you're saying, if that's the curriculum or what these school boards want to do, listen, then open it up to the public, take all the feedback, do a poll, and you will see what the results are. And I'll tell you right now, the results are going to be the parents are the primary caregivers. They're the ones who deal with these sensitive topics, determine when it is time to discuss it, not the school board.
Last time I was in Windsor, I was talking to some youngsters, and they were being taught that there's 52 genders that they have to be appreciative of. Your thoughts on that? Can you name these 52 genders? Because
No, I can't. No, I can't name all 52.
Two have been added since that last
is there
conversation.
more?
Come on.
No.
Well, I don't believe this is right. Teaching youngsters that there's 52 or 54, whatever it is, genders. Like, to me, there was always male and female. That's how I always thought of it. Whether you may be gay, you might like the opposite sex or not, that's not for me to judge. So be it, But when it's being taught in the schools and being pushed like that, that's when I have the problem. And the parents aren't being made aware of what their kids are being taught. It's just being pushed. Thoughts?
It's hard to know what they're being taught in school in the first place. I feel like, I mean, you know, as a parent, through the little conversation that you have with your kids about school. Other than that, it's like parent-teacher conferences. I don't know how else parents will get the information on exactly what their kids being taught. But I think trans kids and I think LGBTQ kids have made it pretty clear that they want their expression to be taught as a normal part of society, right?
When did children's opinions on what should be taught matter?
That's a loaded question. Yeah.
What if they want to learn about Transformers all day?
Yeah.
Or Mario Brothers?
They probably, if it was up to them, they probably would.
So
Why would we do that? Why would we allow them to dictate what educational platforms or things that are being taught?
I think about it the same way as looking at other cultures' history and how that's taught in school. When I was taught in school, you know, we learned about the War of 1812 and all this stuff from the side of the colonizer for the most part. There was not a lot of opinion from the other side. There was not a lot of perspective from the other side. And a lot of other ways, things, you know, we learned that, oh, like the fur trade, it was great. They got guns, it was great. And it really wasn't that great. It was painted over to be great, but it was a colonization act, right?
Sounds like a trade.
The way we learn about that, I mean, yeah, they made a trade at that time. It was not in their best interest, though. Either way, we should be learning like the realities about that. the realities about how gay people got rights in this country and in America, how trans people got rights in this country. I think all that stuff should be taught. I think that all lends itself to the opportunity of children discovering their own sexual orientation.
But if that were an elective, say that's an elective in high school, college, university, right? Then take the class if you want. If somebody wants to teach it, go learn it, and you'll be able to tell by who actually enrolls in that class how popular it's going to be, right? And so then let the market, so to speak, determine. But if we're not going to allow kids to handle guns, drugs, alcohol, cars, motorcycles, all the rest of it, right? How is it that we're going to allow them to go and experiment sexually, possibly end up pregnant,
Or with a disease.
And actually, so to speak, set the course of their life on fire, because all of a sudden things are going to change overnight in a heartbeat. And then but now, by allowing them to do that, the people who have actually encouraged that behavior, guess what? They're nowhere to be found when that child now is in trouble, who's now a father or a mother way ahead of their time and don't know what to do. Who's there to help them? I guarantee you, Stephen, the school board, Stephen Leche, Doug Ford, Justin Trudeau, they're AWOL. They don't give a rip anymore. They're just pushing their wokeism on you. And the parents are the ones now who have been blindsided by this, who are the ones who are stuck with that situation and those children. It's not that it's not recoverable. It's not that it's the unforgivable sin. But hold on. But there is a responsibility on the people who actually taught those children that. And that's why the Bible has a verse about the millstone and what happens to people who do that to children. And I encourage you to read that. It's a serious warning. You do not isolate children, mislead them, and cause them to sin. Because that's what you're doing when you do that.
It's the worst sin. One of them.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and grade all the sins, Stephen, but a sin is. But the whole point is I think you understand where I'm coming from. If you go and you mislead somebody and say, let's say somebody walks up to the child and say, "Hey, go play in traffic. It's cool. It's fun. Let me show you this game. It's called Frogger. And if you can make it from this side of the street to that side of the street, I'm going to give you a chocolate bar." And that child gets hit by a car. Guess what? The guy who taught him that is going to be AWOL. And the parents are going to be the ones who are going to be praying to God that child survived getting hit by the car. It's the same thing that's going on with playing with a child's sexuality at an age where they are not ready for it. Because if all of a sudden that goes off the rails, that child can't go back in time and undo it. And the parents are the ones who are going to be there trying to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, it's well, you said like kids getting pregnant and stuff. That happened in my school. I'm sure it's happened in your guys in grade school. I'm sure it's happened. And I'm sure you would probably agree that this whole wokeness thing wasn't as big then. It wasn't as big when I was a kid. It definitely wasn't as big when you guys were kids. I don't think teaching kids about different sexual orientations is going to lead to that. But I don't think whether they teach it or not leads to that.
Reading to some people who they didn't want to listen to it, but it's said in there, it actually explained, and for the sake of the viewers maybe not wanting to hear the words, it actually said rubbing, kissing, licking on there. Okay, so it is not just a neutral representation of genitalia. It is saying this is what you can do with that genitalia and how you can have different experiences and experiment and just go have a good time, kids. But that is like saying like, hey, you should go in this rocket ship and just take off, and hope you got your parachute with you, and if you don't, whatever. But it's reckless behavior is what I'm getting at. It's saying,
I think the reckless behavior comes anyways. It's almost intrinsic in children.
Why hasten it?
I don't think that teaching them about homosexuality hastens it. I don't think teaching them about trans kids will hasten
it. Topic that even the people in that community have difficulty explaining. How could you possibly have a teacher all of a sudden throw in a half an hour of, hey, by the way, and then move on? The child's just going to be left with more questions than answers, and they're going to be like, I don't even know what to say about this. And before you know it, they could be making decisions that they wouldn't have been making if it had been actually presented by the parents at home in a nice, calm, quiet situation where they can actually just have that discussion, say, this is what it is. What questions do you have? And have that exchange, because that exchange isn't going to happen in a day. It's going to happen over months and years.
Yeah. And the age is depicted, by the parent should be the appropriate age, right?
Agreed. 100%.
Yeah.
That's what we're getting at.
Because as we know, children can develop differently at different ages, right? Height, brain development, milestones. It happens at specific general times, but every child varies.
So when should we teach kids about any sexual orientation in school? When should it happen?
I mean, like I think I mentioned earlier, I teach Sunday school, and if a child came to me and had questions of a sensitive nature about whether it's about their sexuality or something else, I'll say, hey, I say, you know, we do teach from the Bible that their parents bring them to the church. We do teach from Genesis that God created a male and female, and that's the way that it is. And if that child has a deeper question about it, I am not going to sit there in that classroom and have that conversation with that child. I'm going to say, these are good questions that you have. There's no reason to, you know, feel ashamed about what you're asking, but there is an appropriate people and place for that discussion. That's your parents and at home. And so then when the parents came to the classroom, I would say, hey, little Johnny or little Sarah had these questions today. Maybe later on you'd like to talk to them about it, you know, and that's up to the parents to do.
That's exactly how it should be handled, in my opinion.
Yeah,
as well.
and I'll tell you right now, when I look at these books, if somebody ever asked me whether I'm paid or not to teach that to a child, I'll say, hell no, you can have the job. I'll find something else to do. And that's what these school boards should do. That's what these teachers should do. If they are being forced to do this, go find something else to do. You know, God found you that job in the first place. He'll find you another one. I've been in that situation before where you got to make a call. Are you going to do the right thing, or are you going to roll over because you want a paycheck? And now is the time for people to decide what they're going to do. And I say, do the right thing. Let God take care of the results.
Well, we can all agree that this should be left up to the parents. Am I correct? Parents should be, left aware or made aware of the taught in the schools.
I came here questioning that. I am still questioning that. I still don't know whether or not we should be pushing for a normalized curriculum to teach all sexual orientations, because for me, I just learned about one. So if I'm listening to you guys, we shouldn't be teaching about any of them, right?
I have a proposal. So right now you have charter schools, private schools, home schools, right? You could also have schools where you want to teach a certain curriculum, something different, right? But a public school board should be neutral. They're a public school board. They should be neutral. Right. So if there is a group of people who want to fly the rainbow flag at their school, could they not open their own school and do their own thing on their own time with parents who?
So gay people in their own school.
Well, no, if they actually want to teach, because what I'm getting at is that it's not morally neutral. It's not morally neutral.
Well, that's pretty clear. People have a different idea of morality. Exactly. Of morality subjective.
So you wouldn't want a pastor to go to a public school and teach that the Christian faith is the only way, because that's what the Bible says, right?
Right.
The Bible is very clear about that, right? That Jesus is the only way. I presume you wouldn't want that to be taught in a public school. Right. So, but the woke religion or this gender identity politics is what's being taught in the public school that should be neutral. It's not neutral. So then I say, go start your own schools, just like everybody else has.
Why is it not neutral?
Biblically speaking,
it's based on the belief
faith.
System, right? 100%. A different belief system will believe something else.
Well, our society is based off of Judeo-Christian values. Everything.
Well, as far as religions go, they're a set of values, beliefs, and principles that people follow that shape their decisions on a daily basis, what they do, what they support, who showed up here as counter protesters, you know, who show up on the other side, people of faith, of a different faith, I would say, right? And so, yes, it is a religion because it's something that you practice as a lifestyle and it guides their lives. It's how they shape what they do.
Yeah, I still disagree with that. It's that would be saying your heteronormativity is also a religion. Are you guided by the fact that
you're right?
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Genesis 2.
But you're guided by the Bible telling you that's your sexuality.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not guided by the sexuality itself. So saying that
correctly. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so how is gay, trans, LGBT, how is that its own religion then?
Pardon me? How is its own religion? Well, because it's a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. That's it's one definition of religion. You guys, sorry,
I do better reading.
right there at the bottom.
Of a superhuman power or powers,
Nope.
especially a god or
No, a
gods.
pursuit or interest to which someone
Oh, the
ascribes
third
supreme
definition.
importance. Yeah, obviously, religion would be it's a belief in and worship of superhuman god or gods.
Well, in that
right? But it's a
definition, you could say people are religious about anything. If someone's addicted to
You're
video games, they're religious.
You're right. People can idolize anything.
Yeah,
I can idolize that.
but does that mean we treat, say, addiction as a religion?
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, if people are what they wrap their minds around, what they're actually worshiping are those drugs.
Right.
That is what they're saying. What I need to
I'm sorry.
earn my money for and spend my money on is to get my next high.
Oh, you won't be able to.
So they're idolizing that drug.
And their behaviors functioned off of a lot of.
So it shapes. So it's their lifestyle.
So are different drug addicts treated differently from other drug addicts in terms of treatment and recovery?
I think we're going off the rails here a little bit. The gay pride flag is flown for a reason. It represents a group of people, what they believe, what they value, and their principles, and how they think that people should run their lives, and what is the right thing to do. People disagree with that, and that's okay, and it needs to be okay, right?
People don't have to.
So just
even gay people at all.
Sure, exactly. But the whole point to come back to though is that yes, I would say within your community, maybe it's and I mean this as a description, not as a slight of any kind, but it's tribal. You guys believe what you believe. It's not necessarily written down in any one place, but this is, you believe that you're
Well, it's on both sides.
right. But we have the Bible.
Right, but everybody interprets it in a way. I mean, it's been rewritten by the main four, right?
The Bible is the inspired word of God.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's been canonized, yes, but the
Right, yeah.
historicity of the Bible is higher than any other document that's ever existed, and there's a reason why the Bible's never listed on any bestseller list, because it blows them all away. But that's a whole other topic. But the point being is that the flag represents a group of people, right? Their system of values and beliefs, and what they believe is most important, right? That's why they're fighting. That's why they're fighting for it.
Well, it represents sexual orientation. Now, how does that have anything to do with the children? Why should that be flowing in the classrooms or on school property or anything else? Shouldn't the Canadian flag be inclusive for everybody?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I when I see that flag, I'm like, why? I respect it and everything else. I would never do any trample it. I've seen that happen and everything else. But still, it represents sexual orientation at the end of the day.
Sure.
And why should that be flown in the schools, especially without a Canadian flag being anywhere on the property?
If you want me to play devil's advocate, you don't think those communities have been classically or generally misrepresented or oppressed in the past?
Of course they have. But I respect all genders and all races, and I've never had any problems with the gay or lesbian community whatsoever.
Right.
I have friends that are gay and lesbian.
Yeah,
so
there might not be a straight flag, but those people who are represented
flag either, because I don't agree with flying anything that represents a sexual orientation. I think the Canadian flag should be inclusive for everybody.
Amen.
So
I understand that.
The bottom line we're getting at is that people can freely express themselves,
yeah,
in different ways in Canada, as long as you don't encroach on somebody else's rights and freedoms, obviously, right? But go ahead and do so. But if you're in a public school board that should be neutral on all such topics, but is not being neutral, that's why we have a problem. So if there was a school that is a Christian school, a Muslim school, right, whatever the school might be, and then if people who fly the rainbow flag, so to speak, then they can have their own school. But why does a public school have to be used to force it on the children who attend there?
I don't think flying a flag forces anything on anybody. I don't think it does.
it represents sexual orientation. Now, why does it have to be in the schools?
Because there's
Well,
these people have not
is
been
not enough.
treated fairly through history.
Well, what about
And still today,
what about
there's
for Black
so.
History Month or anything else? Why don't we have flags for everybody then?
I agree. We should definitely have a
Think-
Black History Month flag. I don't see the
You don't
problem
think
with a
Canadian
Christian
flag
school
is-
flying a Christian flag.
Exclusive for everybody. Like,
Public school, if I mean,
There's Christians in there, and that sign over there says every child matters. Then shouldn't there be a Christian flag up for a month or so?
then shouldn't there be an Islamic flag as well
Right.
next to the Christian?
Shouldn't we make more months?
There be,
So that's why
we need a lot more months.
That's why certain school districts have said the only flags they'll fly are either federal, provincial, or municipal, and that is the cleanest way and easiest way to do it.
yes.
Just fly the federal, the provincial, or the municipal flag, and get on with life.
And that represents everybody.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes. Which, by the way, is stated. That flag over there, the Canadian Bill of Rights, it reaffirms God's laws.
Yeah, I guess like the devil's advocate in me would say it's reparations. It's these people are still classically being mistreated in these environments. There's still a lot of hate. There's still a lot of people saying a lot of derogatory things.
But when people protest and people are being roughed up, being dragged around, pushed around, it's not the people in the gay community. It's the ones who are coming there and protesting, who are on a public sidewalk,